Councillor Thompson. We need 2/3 for that, Mr. Clerk. We need 2/3 for that. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, everyone, we're doing it by voting, your voting tablet. Okay, that carries. Just before I continue, just to let everyone know, we are going to be using the voting tablets for every vote except for the adjournment. So is everyone clear on that? Okay. So I will begin with the motion to approve the agenda as amended, moved by Councillor Gilliland, seconded by Councillor Thompson, and use your voting tablet to vote. Oh, Councillor Gallo. Question? Yeah.
Can I just confirm that the delegate, Ms. Walmer, will be allowed to delegate?
That'd be correct. She's on.
Thank you.
Who are you waiting for? Well, that carries. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We don't have any presentations. We do have one delegation, two delegations. Sorry, Mr. Clerk. Can I see these? First off, we have Larry Decima representing York Region Christian Seniors Homes, Inc. in regards to our General Committee item R2. Just to remind you, you have 5 minutes. You can state your name, and you'll hear a chime when you get to a minute left.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of Council, my name is Larry Decima, and I've been with the York Region Christian Seniors Homes Board for the last 6 years or so. We prefer to call it the Aurora Meadows. It's just a lot easier to say than York Region Christian Seniors Homes. There's 2 items or 2 points I'd like to make tonight, and this is all regarding our request for an exemption from the noise bylaw. The first point or the item is just a little bit of background about our project, and then the second item is to talk about some of the comments that were made last week at the committee meeting about noise and disruption. So on the screen you'll see the entire site, and some of it's existing and some of it's proposed. All the way on the right is already built. There's 154 apartment buildings there. Apartment units, sorry, and then in the middle is phase 2, the 2 towers with the podium in between, and that's what's under construction right now, and then phases 3 and 4 are to the left of the screen. So we as a board are all volunteers. It's a non-profit project, no government funding at all. Our board members are all picked for their skills to make sure that this project proceeds, whether they're involved in seniors care, construction, finance, land development approvals, that sort of thing. We pay all our regular development charges, parkland fees. We've paid for our share of the roads to the other developers in town. So we're doing all of this without any help from anybody, but it's non-profit, and we're trying to deliver affordable, high-quality Christian seniors living. The first building, as I said, is all occupied. It's built, and the residents really enjoy living there. They get together for coffee socials, hymn sings, and so on, and it's a great place for them to enjoy life. The board also saw a need for assisted living, and that's why we're going ahead now with phase 2. And the money for that has been raised from the community again, and some bank financing, and it's under construction right now. The first 2 floors in this building, so if we can go to the next slide, please, are for assisted living and memory care. So there's the podiums on either side, and then the first 2 floors in both buildings will be for that. And then in the middle there's a central restaurant, cafe, that kind of thing, nursing stations for the assisted living. And the top 5 floors are again all independent living. and we expect occupancy there in about 2020. So we feel like we're providing much needed service for residents of Aurora and the surrounding area. And I'd be pleased to give any members of council a tour of the facility if they would like to do so. So that was kind of the overview and background. I also want to just talk to you about our request for the exemption from the noise bylaw. Mike Morale is here with me from Lisgar Construction. He's available to answer questions about the details of our request if council would like. The board first hired Lisgar to build the first building, and it went very well, on time and on budget. So the board also asked Lisgar to build phase 2. They're a high-quality, very conscientious builder. They know the bylaw about noise and disturbance, and they adhere to it. They know working hours from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. only. I was here last week. I heard the comments from the neighbor across the road about the disturbance and the noise, and so I just don't think or believe that the Meadows is responsible for all of the noise and disturbance that this gentleman was experiencing. There's a lot of other construction in the area. The Region's building Leslie Street right now, and I understand they're even exempt from the bylaw, so they could work during the night. We heard from Mrs. Van Leeuwen that she has sent bylaw officers there, and they've never noticed an infraction. Mike tells me that his guys know not to work before 7 or after 7. They adhere to that. I've canvassed several residents in the building, and including my mother who lives there, and her apartment actually looks right over top of the construction site, and she's talked to her neighbors. Nobody has ever been disturbed during the night. They've never noticed anything in terms of that. So, you know, we have one complainant, and we have hundreds of homes in the area and 154 apartments that are right next door to the construction site. Nobody else has mentioned anything about this noise. I want to make the point that the board, the contractor know about the noise bylaw. As far as I know, everybody's adhering to it. And that's why we're asking for an exemption just for this one issue about finishing concrete in the evenings. It's not a lot of noise. It's 2 or 3 men on power trowels, and it has to be at night because the concrete has to be poured during the day. If you have any questions, happy to answer them, and Mr. Morale as well. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Deckma. Can I get a motion to receive the delegation? Moved by Councillor Kim, seconded by Councillor Gilliland. Any comments or questions for the delegation? Councillor Gardner.
Can you remind me of the timing for the concrete pour? What exactly you're going to need and why?
Mr. Deckma.
Yep. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I've got a list here from the project manager, if I can just go through that. So the concrete pump truck arrives at 7 a.m. and sets in place. So approximately 7:30, the first concrete truck to arrive will contain a concrete grout mix to prime the concrete pump. Concrete trucks arrive and placing commences at approximately 8 a.m. Concrete placing typically ends by approximately 3 p.m. Concrete finishers arrive on site and wait for the slab to harden enough to walk on, typically 3 to 6 hours depending on ambient temperature and thickness of the slab. Once achieved, so in other words, once they can walk on it, then they can start using the power trowels. So, and that takes a couple hours after that to get done.
Thank you.
Gardner?
I'm not clear though. Is the concrete in place and ready to go at 7 a.m. or they're bringing it in at 7 a.m.?
They start bringing it in at 7 a.m.
Thank you. And that's part of my problem. And how often do you think, or how much time do you think this is going to take for the development?
Mr. Deckma.
We're asking for an exemption until September of next year.
But I assume you're not going to be pouring concrete every day from January 1st till December. Any idea how much time the contractor?
I don't know how many days a week they would be doing it, but it's you know, you saw on the diagram there's 2 towers there, so it's 7 floors. It's a lot of concrete that's got to go in, so it's going to take probably up you know, as much time as that.
Oh, thank you. So it's not just the concrete on the foundation floor?
No, it's each floor. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. We heard last week from the director that in previous instances, they've worked with the developer to improve communication by notifying the residents each time the pour was going to happen and trying to mitigate some of that impact. Can I assume that you're willing to do the same thing and provide that kind of notification and communication to the residents about those activities? Mr.
Dekma?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my understanding is it would be almost like it would be so often that it would almost it wouldn't be useful anymore, because he'd be getting notices 3 days a week. I'm going to say we're willing to do it, but I think it would be a lot of unnecessary, well, I don't want to say unnecessary, but it would be people would get so many notices that eventually they wouldn't pay attention to it anymore, because it would happen 3 or 4 days every week.
Councillor Thompson?
Would it be, thank you very much, through you to the delegate. Could we at least get a commitment from you to try and find some reasonable means to communicate to the residents, to try and work with them through the director?
Yeah.
Mr. Dekma?
I will. Yes, we will agree to that. Yes, of course.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Dekma, for coming. Last week, the general consensus, it seemed, was that the general noise that's created by the pouring of concrete and the troweling is a lot less disturbing than other construction noises from other construction actions. Would you say that that is a fair assessment?
Mr. Dekma?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. My understanding is that there would be no other activity other than the power troweling after 7 p.m. And Mr. Morelli actually had someone there doing decibel readings while the troweling was happening. And I don't remember the numbers exactly, but I think, the ambient noise with cars going by and so on was 55 decibels standing across the street. When the power trowelers were turned on, it went to 60 decibels. So that's the kind of noise. It's not much more noise than you would have anyways. And I understand too that the City of Toronto bylaw allows up to 85 decibels for this type of work. So we're at around 60 decibels 20 meters away.
Councillor Kim?
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Councillor Gilliland?
Yes, just shouldering on what Councillor Kim said, and we had discussed this last week. Could you confirm that there is no reason for any trucks to be backing up and I guess have that backing up noise that's really what is really loud that wakes up the neighbors?
Yeah.
Mr. Dekma?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can confirm that none of that will be happening outside of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilliland. Yep.
That's good.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor to receive? Opposed? Oh, sorry, I forgot. Use your voting tablet. That carries. Thank you,
Thank you very much.
So we'll move to our second delegation. Ms. Susan Walmer. Ms. Walmer, if I just remind you to state your name, and you have 5 minutes, and you'll hear a tone with 1 minute remaining.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Susan Walmer, and I'm here speaking as a private citizen, former Citizen of the Year, and past Citizen Environmental Committee Chair. I'm here tonight to talk about Bill 66 as a follow-up from my open forum statement December 11th, where Mayor Marakis later in the meeting passionately stated that he was going to put forward a motion this week to protect the Oak Ridges Moran and Greenbelt. In honor of Councillor Abel, I would also like to remind Council of a motion passed on June 12th, 2018, where Councillor John Abel moved Motion 8B, read Greenbelt Protection, seconded by Councillor Gartner, in response to issues that arose during the election regarding the potential development of the Greenbelt. I believe that Councillor Marakis at the time left the meeting with an earlier comment that he didn't agree to councillors should bring forth motions so close to the election. So Councillor Marakis at the time didn't vote on the Greenbelt protection on John Abel's motion, and now is his chance to make a very strong statement. Although John and I didn't see eye to eye on all environmental matters, I'm very pleased that this motion he introduced was passed by the Council of Aurora and has been officially sent to the province of Ontario to honor and respect the land, water, and air that sustains us all. Unfortunately, it didn't seem to make a difference. Since this new Bill 66, Restoring Ontario's Competitiveness Act, introduced December 6, facilitates development across Ontario and is established to cut red tape for businesses, but at what cost? Our health, natural environment, and the right to transparency and open decision-making? So we need to be even more clear and more stronger with this next motion to the province. If passed, this legislation would trump critical environmental protections for land, water, and wildlife. Schedule 10 of the proposed legislation would allow municipalities to create an open for business planning bylaw to circumvent planning requirements and land use restrictions under numerous provincial laws, plans, and policies. It would undermine everything, literally everything, that we have learned over decades of public participation and land use planning forums, sometimes under tragic circumstances, about how to protect our environment and the health of people and communities across Ontario, like Aurora. We do not want another disaster like Walkerton. Open for business bylaws can bypass legal requirements intended to ensure fair, consistent, and transparent public engagement with land use decisions in our communities. These bylaws can be passed without any public notice or meetings. There goes transparency. These bylaws cannot be appealed to the Local Planning Act Tribunal, which is the OMB replacement that many thousands of advocates across Ontario were involved in creating. These bylaws do not need to be consistent with municipal official plans. Many of the councillors here tonight at the table were elected on their commitments to follow our official plan. These bylaws do not need to be consistent with Planning Act policies, and they do not need to conform to the provincial plans such as the Clean Water Act, the Oak Ridges Moraine Act, the Greenbelt Act, the Lake Simcoe Act, the Places to Grow Act, and others. This is not about unnecessary red tape or creating jobs. It's about generating short-term profits for few at the long-term costs of many. Additionally, Ontario's economy is strong and the unemployment rate is at its lowest in 18 years, and the construction industry is also doing well. Don't let this happen here in Aurora. We can have a healthy environment and a healthy economy. The motion tabled this evening by Mayor Marakis uses polite words like reconsider and many whereases, but the strength of emotion is in the section, now therefore it be hereby resolved. I would propose the following motion be considered by the town of Aurora: keeping the town of Aurora open for business without jeopardizing the Greenbelt and other environmental protections. There's a number of whereases. One of the most important ones is that there's no notice or hearing is required, and that the Greenbelt has protected 1.8 million of farmland for over 12 years. There's also a tremendous amount of land, including employment lands already planned and available in excess of the development needs of the GTA without weakening the protections provided by the Greenbelt. So the strong wording: therefore, be it resolved that the town of Aurora opposes Schedule 10 of Bill 66, an act to restore Ontario's competitiveness by amending or repealing certain acts, and calls for its removal from the bill, and that notwithstanding the future adoption of Bill 66, the town of Aurora will not exercise powers granted to it in Schedule 10 or any successor sections or schedules to pass open for business planning bylaws. I've learned as an environmental advocate over 30 years that weak, polite words provide weak results. Strong, clear wording will result in purposeful actions that protect our land, water, and air. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walmer. Can I get a motion to receive the delegates? Moved by Councillor Gardner, seconded by Councillor Gallo. Any comments or questions for the delegate? Seeing none, you can use the tablet to vote, to receive. That carries. Thank you, Ms. Walmer. Okay. So before I move into the consent agenda, I just want to mention that Councillor Humphreys mentioned that she's just missing the beginning part of the meeting. She will be here shortly. She's actually visiting her grandson who's in a play, so she'll be here shortly. So any items on the consent agenda that anyone wants to pull? I'll start to my right, or hit your button if you want to pull anything. Seeing none? Nobody wants to pull anything from the consent agenda? Okay. Move to approve the consent agenda, items C1 to C6. Moved by Councillor Kim, seconded by Councillor Gilliland. Use your voting tablet. And that carries. We'll move to standing committee reports. Mr. Clerk, just so we can remind the two new members, do we ask if we want to pull something from the standing committee report? Okay. Or if you have a question. So to those new members, things have changed. Councillor Gallo from previous terms. So if you want something pulled, you would ask at this time to pull it. Or if you just have a simple question for a certain item within the standing committee report, you can ask that question. So is there any, I'll ask any councillors want to pull any items from the standing committee report? Councillor Gardner?
Yes, please. Could I have R1, R3, I guess R2 as well?
Thank you. Anyone else? I'm seeing none, but I'm just going to ask. Oh, Councillor Gillian.
R8.
R8. Okay. Anything else? So just to repeat, we got R1, R2, R3, and R8. So can I get a motion to approve the rest of the items from our standing committee report? Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Gallo. Use your voting tablet. That's approved. So we move to R1. Councillor Gardner. Can I get you to move that?
I'll move it.
Seconder. Councillor Thompson. Go ahead, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to ensure that the Governance Review Committee will be including in their research about wards, also when the report comes forward, also an option for at-large, as we are now, with the pros and cons, as many members in the community are still in favor of an at-large system.
Is that a question, or is that just a comment?
That's a comment. I don't need to put it in the motion, do I?
No. And we'll make sure that staff make sure that that's part of the terms of reference.
Thank you.
Is that all?
That's the first one. The second one is has to do with the reporting of the minutes with respect to questions that are asked and answered by staff under the new business section. I did mention it last time, but it seems to me that there would have to be a change in the, with respect to the committee structure, there would have to be a change in the reporting requirements if I wanted that to happen.
Mr. Clerk?
I'm looking at page 13 under reporting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I don't think there's anything that could be amended within the report to change that. Certainly, I know myself have heard at the CAO, and we're going to work together and see if we can't provide a bit more deal. As it's the municipal act that holds us back in terms of that. So, but we're certainly going to look in just to see if we can do something within the provisions of the Municipal Act.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. And it is in the Municipal Act that it is the intent that the clerk record the minutes without any comment. But in this case, it's not the clerk that's making the comment, it's staff that's making a comment in response to a committee member's question. And the reason why that's important is that those questions and answers could be of, the information in them could be of benefit to council. When the minutes come forward, there's a lot of, I think that would just add clarification for council and for the residents. So I don't see why that can't be changed. It could just be, could be 13.6, heading new business. When committees' questions are answered by staff under the new business section, both the questions and answers will be recorded in the minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Mr. Clerk, can that be done? And if, my understanding is from what you're saying is that you'll look through each individual terms of reference and you'll make sure that that's incorporated. What the comments are coming from Councillor Gardner. Am I correct on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I would say that. I think we'll, under the Municipal Act, we'll try and provide more of these answers as best we can without breaking, as we see the provisions of the Municipal Act. And then, Councillor, maybe I can meet with you in 3 or 4 months and see if you're more satisfied with how the minutes look.
That would be great. And I don't think that, I mean, I'll have a look again at the Municipal Act, but I don't think that recording the minutes those ways is going to break the requirement that the clerk doesn't make his own personal or her own personal comment. If I could just ask you, is that the intent, that the clerk doesn't weigh into the meeting information with their own opinion?
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe it's more for it's the intent of that the members don't get to interject their own comments. The minutes are meant to capture committee and council decisions and not much else.
Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. Let's see how it works out, because I guess it could be up to the chair of each committee then to provide a companion to the minutes to say this is what happened. But I do think it's important that council has the information.
Is that all, Councillor Gardner?
That's all for R1.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. There was some conversation last week about expanding the membership for the Community Advisory Committee. Currently, there's only 5 citizen members. I'd like to put an amendment on the floor that it be increased to 9.
Is that motion to amend it to 9?
Yep.
Seconded
9 citizen members.
Seconded by Councillor Gardner. Any comments or questions on the amendment? Mr. CEO.
Mr. Mayor, can I recommend that be up to 9, just in case when you get the nominations, if you don't have enough, you're not sort of stuck having to find someone? Yeah, you have lots of interest, but I think it'd be better to put up to 9 with that larger number.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Is the mover and seconder okay with that? Up to 9? Okay. Any comments or questions on the amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Use your tabulators. Up to 9 citizen members. Everybody vote. Councillor Gartner. That carries. Back to the main motion as amended. Councillor Thompson, you still have the floor. You're good? Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Use your tabulators. That carries. R2, Councillor Gartner. You going to move that as is? Oh, actually, we just received it last week, so you're going to be putting something on the floor?
I'm not in favor, so perhaps someone else wants to.
Councillor Gallo?
The first clause, or the second clause, that the exception to the town noise bylaw number 4787-06P to allow for the construction of cast-in-place concrete slabs at 440 William Graham Drive be approved.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo. Can I get a seconder for that? Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gartner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's very concerning to me that we will be granting for pretty much for 11 months a process that's going to, for 11 months, cause noise after 7 o'clock in the evening, perhaps till 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't think it's fair to residents. I think we're allowing construction companies to profit either financially or through convenience at the expense of our residents. And I'm wondering, the concrete is not on the site. The concrete comes on the site at 7 o'clock in the morning. So is it possible to get the concrete on the site the day before and work to start mixing earlier than 7 o'clock, so we won't have the truck noise, and that way we can, the construction company can finish much earlier than 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, the concrete has to be poured. I don't know what the solution is, but I think we have to come to some sort of compromise, because it's very unfair to say to the residents, you're just going to have to listen to this noise for a good part of 11 months until perhaps 3 in the morning.
Did you want an answer to that question, Councillor Gartner?
I would like an Ms.
Van Leeuwen, do you want to take this one on?
Ms. Van Leeuwen, and she's telling me that it can't be done, but I don't see why the construction company can't have their ducks in a row the day before and start mixing at 5 or 6 in the morning. Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the concrete is a finicky process. You can't mix it on the site. There's companies who deliver concrete to construction sites, and there's time limits on the batch time. There's time requirements for the setting. It's a finicky process, so that is not possible.
Councillor Gartner?
So I'm going to vote against this in principle, because I think this is just, we're just asking way too much pain from our residents in order to build a structure that may or may not benefit the community, but it's certainly not benefiting the residents. And I would like to know through you, Mr. Mayor, to perhaps Ms. Van Leeuwen, Do we have many concrete structures in town? Do we approve many of them?
Ms. Van
Is that a
Leeuwen?
common, or Mr. Mino, is that somebody over there, is that a common building practice that I mean, the report says that this is going to be the beginning of many infill projects, perhaps. So is this what we're going to subject our residents to?
Mr. Ramuno?
To you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I mean, they've got approval for another 2 buildings. We haven't seen those site plans, but any of these mid-rise buildings, if they're poured concrete, they will be required to work overnight to trowel the concrete.
Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. And the second part of that question, is that the preferred building practice right now is to have poured concrete structures?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are some stick frame buildings as well, but standard practice up to this point is for these 6-story buildings is poured concrete.
Councillor Gardner?
Follow up. And for the 4-story buildings?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've seen some stick built.
Councillor Gardner?
I'm speechless.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Gallo?
I guess I'm very familiar with this process and the noise it makes, and I didn't have a problem with it last week. I had more of an issue with the ancillary noise prior to 7 or after 11. This is not the first time I'd remind everyone, this is not the first time we're doing this. Chantro at Yonge and Wellington had this, and the buildings that I'm sure will be coming down the pipe will require this. I'm not concerned about the noise level because I've heard them downtown Toronto, and I really don't know if there is an alternative. If we're allowing multi-story buildings, they really have no choice but to do this.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen. Ms. Van Leeuwen, you heard last week the concerns of the residents, and tonight you heard the assurances of the developer with regards to the construction, and that nothing else would take place between those hours in terms of the exemption. You spoke last week about trying to make additional efforts to have bylaw officers go by the site outside of those normal hours to make sure that there's in compliance. Is there anything else you could say to council tonight, just to give us some assurances that what has been said tonight with regards to the activity will be adhered to, and that the only activity will be the construction of cast-in-place concrete slabs after hours?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have had bylaw officers on site continuously overnight this past week, and the only observation that they made was there was some large construction equipment on the east side of Leslie related to the road work. But they observed compliance at 440 William Dunn. The workers started arriving at about 10 to 7 in their vehicle, so there was no activity prior to 7 a.m. There was one evening that they were troweling, and we did observe that at about midnight or 12:30. But other than that, they have been compliant.
Great.
Councillor Thompson?
And as we've heard, and it's been stated already on the table, that this is standard practice for a building of this magnitude. We approve this building, and so I'll be supporting what's in front of me.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gilliland?
I'm going to echo what Mr. Councillor Thompson had said. Most of my questions were answered, but I just want to clarify that the noise exemption is to 1 a.m., correct? Not 3 a.m.?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they're looking for an exemption for the pouring of concrete. It will approximately end at 1 a.m., but it might go until 1:30. It depends on the finishing and how long it takes. And as we've heard from the delegate, ambient temperatures have a play in how the concrete sets and how quickly it sets. So they're looking for the exemption while they're pouring and finishing the concrete.
Councillor?
I really see no issue with the noise exemption, because we do want to make sure that the integrity of the building actually withstands properly for the process of concrete. I like that the construction company had said that there is no backing up of trucks, and that's not the noise that we're exempting from, so I would be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Gilliland. Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify on all points, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Van Leeuwen, with respect to light pollution, how much light will be necessary while the concrete is being poured, perhaps up to 1 o'clock in the morning?
Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, for clarity, the exemption and the work that will happen after 7 p.m. is with respect to the power troweling. So it's not, the pouring of the concrete will be complete by then. The workers, I understand, are wearing headlamps, and there's minimal lighting related to the power troweling.
Okay. Councillor Kim.
Yeah, great. I think everything I've heard today, the reassurances from the builder, and last term when phase 1 was going on, we didn't really, I don't recall having any residents come to council complaining about phase 1. I don't recall receiving any phone calls or council emails on that either. So I'm pretty satisfied with, from the experience from phase 1, that it will continue to have, the same process will be in place for phase 2, and that'll be fine with me.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote using your tabulator. That carries. We'll move to R3, 2019 fees and charges update. Councillor Gartner, do you want to move this one?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Move as is?
Yes, thank you.
Can I get a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Gallo. Councillor Gartner, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and I apologize to Council that I omitted to go over this carefully enough last week. I do want to say that going over it on the weekend, I found some things that I found were quite concerning. I'm going to say what they are, and then I would like to have staff give council a report back on this so we could discuss it at a future time. Just through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Clerk, if this is passed as a bylaw tonight, it can be adjusted at any time.
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the bylaw could be amended when it comes back for passing. It's not on the agenda tonight. And then any directions council wanted to pass to staff for inclusion in the bylaw when it does come forward to council should be done through amendments.
Councillor Garner?
Thank you. If anybody wants to follow, on page 15 and 16, there are programs offered for seniors. Aquatics programs, just general programs of seniors' interest. And I know that there are some seniors who are in financial need, and I know that we try and help children and families who are in financial need. So I would like council to consider a process whereby a senior could come to us if they say they're in financial need and they need a discount, then we just take their word for it. So I'd like that to be considered. I'd also like to have, there's page 23, 26, and 29. These have to do with, 23 is tree permit removal fees. And I'm assuming that these are healthy trees. To me, it's just ludicrous. And we've done it before, and I've never caught it, but we are charging, if you take down 3 trees that are less than 20 centimeters, you have to pay us $209.36. If you take down 8 trees that are less than 20 centimeters, you have to pay us $104.65. I don't think that there's anything in here that is discouraging people from taking down trees, and I think that's what we should be discouraging. We need the trees. on page 26, we're charging for the demolition of single semi-row houses a flat fee of $280 for 55 meters squared or less. I mean, I think that these things need to be looked at. I don't think that we're really charging enough for this. And there's also a part on page 29, and Ms. Van Leeuwen and I had an interesting conversation about this when she first started. If somebody puts up a structure that requires a permit and they don't come to us for a permit, well, we're going to impose a penalty. And frankly, the penalty is so small, I don't know why somebody wouldn't try and put up a structure without getting a permit and asking for forgiveness later. I think we need to look at these things and tighten them up. And I'd also like to know through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps to Mr. Nadarozny, why there are no fees listed for the armory rental.
Mr. CEO.
Through Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, the armory is subject to an agreement with Niagara College, so we'll be establishing rates with them once the building's complete and their operating plan is completed. So,
Councillor Gardner.
And when would that be?
Mr. CEO.
Through Mr. Mayor, that would be before the June opening. I don't know when exactly.
Thank you. And then once we establish that, that would be on the schedule. Who would be collecting the fees? Would it be us or Niagara College?
Through Mr. Mayor, it would be Niagara College, so it wouldn't appear in our fee schedule.
Councillor Gardner.
So if the public wants to rent part of the armory, they're going to pay Niagara College the fee for that?
Mr. CEO.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's great, although there'll be a preferential rate for town events and so on. That's what we're working through the details with Niagara College now.
Councillor Gardner.
Then I completely misunderstood part of the agreement. I thought that Aurora would be receiving those fees to help offset the costs of giving this to Niagara College. Okay. Do I need to make a motion about the other things that I've mentioned about relooking at page 15, 16?
I was going to suggest, Councillor Gardner, that if you sit down with appropriate staff, whether it's Ms. McDougall or even town clerk, and go through these items, and they'll be able to work on this with you offline, and then we can get to a point where you're comfortable with the issues that you have in regards to some of the fees.
Well, actually, what I was hoping to do was to make a motion for staff to do a report on the things that I've mentioned, which is potential senior subsidy, and increasing the prices for tree removal and demolition, and penalties when permits haven't been applied for.
Okay, so you'd like to put a motion on the floor for staff to bring back a report in regards to the comments that you've made in the fees?
Thank you, and it would be a very simple report, because I think it would just really be a council discussion as to see if anybody wants to change those.
Okay, let me see if I can get a seconder. Anyone want to second that? Seeing none, no seconder.
Okay, Gardner, thank you. Then.
Oh, you're past your time. I am being told by Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. I'm very disappointed.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Gardner. Just making sure I got your attention. Just in general, how are the prices set within this document? Is it based on historical prices? Is it based on comparators versus other municipalities? A bit of both? What's the mechanism to determine what the right price is?
Mr. Gardner?
The general practice is to, in recognition that essentially the cost of delivering these services are going up like any other household cost by inflation, to generally increase the rates by at least inflation if that's reasonable to do so, considering market rates and other factors. So that's the general practice. More specifically, any other rate change. I'm presuming one of my colleagues here could address that.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. And so, again, through you to Ms. Garner, would it be fair to say then, it's up to the department leads to every once in a while just make sure that the prices that are being charged are within those market rates?
Mr. Gardner?
I think that's a fair assumption, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson?
Okay. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else for the first time? Councillor Gilliland?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm looking at this page 15 that Councillor Gardner had mentioned with the seniors, and if I'm correct, it's saying free to $27, but prior to that it was $285 to $26.60. So in fact, we are actually offering more of a discount.
Ms. McDougall?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, there has been an adjustment based on what we believe is the market rate, looking at where our opportunities are, and some programs, in fact, are free for seniors, and so we wanted to reflect that in our fees bylaw.
Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for the first time? No? Councillor Gardner?
Thank you for noticing that. I'm not going to have a further discussion, but I do believe that would just pertain to a small number of cases, small number of classes. But the whole idea is that there are seniors in need, and we do want them to stay healthy and fit and socially active and connected. And I think Aurora is a wealthy community, but I think Aurora would be surprised to know how many people don't even join the fitness center because they can't afford to. So as I said, we try and help children and families. I'm disappointed that council does not want to look further at helping seniors. With respect to all of the other things, I don't particularly care what other municipalities are doing. I think in Aurora, if people want to take down trees, they should pay dearly for it. I think that if they want to demolish houses, they should dearly pay for that. I think that if they want to do work that they know requires a permit, and they decide not to get a permit, that the penalty should be very large. And we had a situation where somebody actually built an arena, an ice arena on St. John's Side Road. And they never asked us for a permit. And when we found out, well, we did give them a penalty, but it really wasn't very large. To me, that is just really insulting that someone would do that. And I think Aurora needs to stand up and say, listen, you can't do those kind of things here. And if you want to be here, well, that's just the way it is. And on the other hand, we do helping things like helping seniors and children.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Gallo.
I think it's a little unfair to suggest that by not agreeing to this, we're not helping seniors. And I think, Councillor Gardner, if you had presented this in a somewhat organized fashion where I would see it in front of me and I would have a rationale for each of the items that you wanted to change, I would have no problems supporting that. The manner in which it came to council, I mean, I'm trying to flip through pages and see where you're speaking to. It's a little difficult to track, and that's why I didn't support it. And I'm not sure if staff needs to do that, or you sitting down with staff and coming back with an organized list with rationale. I would have no problems taking a look at it and probably supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo.
Excuse me, if I just may respond to that.
Well, you spoke twice, Councillor Gardner. All right.
In all fairness to me, I apologize for not noticing it last week. I sent an email to all of council to say that I was going to be bringing these things forward tonight. All I was asking for was a report from staff so that it could come back to council for further discussion. So yes, it may have been a bit disorganized, but I think that the ask was pretty straightforward, and I think that I tried to inform council in advance of what I was going to be doing.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Seeing no more questions, I'll call the vote. Use your tabulators. That carries. Move to R8, Sport Aurora Funding Agreement Extension. Councillor Gilliland, did you want to put a motion on the floor?
Pardon me?
Did you want to move something?
I wanted to make an amendment to the original recommendation.
Go ahead.
All right, can I say a few words first, or?
No, you have to, we need a motion on the floor.
Okay. All right, so, just 1 second, I'm sorry. So I know the original number 2, but the mayor, town clerk be authorized to extend Sport Aurora agreement for 3 months ending March 31st with an upcent limit of $25,850. And I'd like to add to that and direct staff to report on alternate delivery models for sport initiatives at March 1st. And I also think that the number of funding should be reduced based on all the financials that we had just recently received at the last minute.
Okay. Did you get that, Mr. Clerk? Could you repeat that, Councillor Gilliland, one more time for Mr. Clerk to get that?
So the original recommendation number 2, but I want to reduce the amount of money based on the recent financials that we received, and I want to add to that that we direct staff for alternate deliverables.
Councillor, we need a firm number on your motion.
10,000.
It's the original number 2, and instead of 25,000, what it was, you wanted 10,000.
I'm basing it on there was a bunch of financials that were pointing out. In October, there was a lot of fees that went towards the volunteer celebration.
That's fine, Councillor. So you want it for 10,000. I'll let you speak once we get this on the floor. Yes. So 10,000. Yeah. Can I get a seconder for that? Anyone want to second that? The original, what was originally in front of us last week, which was to approve the extension for 3 months for 25,000, just over 25,000. Councillor Gilliland's putting a motion on the floor to go back to that original ask, direction, except for changing the number from the 25,000 to 10,000. 10,000 for 3 months. Is that correct, Councillor?
Yes, and direct staff to report on alternate models.
And to report back on options. If we can get that on the screen, but if I can get someone to second, does anyone want to second that? Yeah, Councillor Thompson seconds that. If we can just take a moment to get that on the screen for everyone. Once we get it on the screen, Councillor Gilliland, you can have the floor.
Okay. So we did receive quite a lot of information kind of at the last minute. And when I was going through the financials, I was informed by staff that it was a whole year of funding that was divided by 4, and which was what we came up with that number of $25,000. So having looked at the numbers, I noticed that there was quite a few events and things that had happened in October that amounted up to about an additional $15,000 that typically doesn't happen in January, February, March. So in essence, they don't typically need that much funding for those 3 months. I do feel it's important to continue on with Sport Aurora while we have a transitional period. I don't think it would be in best interest of the community to all of a sudden put a pause on Sport Aurora's initiatives as we transition over to a sport board or sport council to move forward with this plan. So I would like to see them continue on what they're doing from now until March 1st at a funding rate that's probably more applicable to their needs.
Thank you, Councillor Gilliland. Any comments or questions? Anyone else? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. If possible, I'd like to direct this question to Councillor Gilliland. Have you had any conversations with Sport Aurora with regards to this figure of $10,000? Because my understanding is that the original ask really was driven by staffing costs for those 3 months. And so I'm just wondering whether or not you've run this by them, they've had any input or anything else.
Councillor Gilliland?
I have not had direct conversation with Sport Aurora about the specifics of the numbers. I'm going based on the last minute financials that we were given based out through the entire year, because the ask was based on from January to December. And looking at those numbers, I just kind of took upon myself to take that chunk that eliminated all those expenditures of $15,810 that was extra over and above that happened primarily in the months of October. And one bulletin that would happen in March, which if we were to end the funding by March 1st, obviously they're not going to be blasting out advertising or quarterly advertising at that point.
Councillor Thompson?
Ms. McDougall, you have the most contact with Sport Aurora out of all of us, and just with regards to the conversations you've had, do you see any concerns if this council passes this motion tonight and instead of the $25,000 they limit it to just $10,000 over the 3 months?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, through the calculation, it was done based on their annual yearly budget, assuming that the costs were spread out throughout the calendar year, and that's why they're divisible into the various months. Without speaking with them, knowing whether or not that $10,000 is sufficient, I don't know. I know that the events, the bigger events, do happen in the fall at a later part of the calendar year. However, there is a fair amount of preparation work to go into those, as well as other activities within the sport plan. It's hard for me to define if $10,000 is sufficient at this moment without having that conversation.
Councillor Thompson?
I think just looking at the budget proposal in front of us, where it's broken down on a monthly basis, I'm just not sure if that's sufficient. They list their administration costs as $6,400 a month. Granted, they're doing it on a prorated basis evenly every month, but that would leave them at a shortfall, and so I'm just not sure whether this is the right direction to go.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did have conversations with a member of Sport Aurora, and we had a pretty frank discussion, and none of the discussions surrounded about the fast tracking of our having events that normally take place in January to March have taken place in October. So that was not discussed. I applaud Councillor Gilliland for looking into all the reports and noticing that those events that might have typically happened in the earlier parts of the year that happened in the fall. But just based on those assumptions, I don't want to give them $10,000 on just what we've read, because I think a lot of the reports seem to be very are kind of like live reports. They seem to change, and the needs seems to change depending on the seasons. And given my conversation with the member, I think it's either we give them all of it or none of it. I'll talk more in detail about the rest of the recommendation or the staff report but on the amendment, I will not agree to that.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Before I go back to Councillor Gilliland, is there anyone else that wants to speak for the first time? Councillor Gallo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My overarching principle, and I think I mentioned it last week, is that I'm not in favor of approving any funds prior to any budget discussion. These are funds that we will be pre-approving prior to the 2019 budget. And as a matter of principle, unless it's some essential service, unless the residents are going to be significantly impacted. I generally don't agree with that process. And this, after reading quite a bit of material, it didn't come across to me as an essential service. So as it stands, my preference is to push pause and reassess and review the sports plan, sports council, and then allocate funds accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. I did come up with that $10,000 quite quickly, and I just want to make it clear that if that is not what Sport Aurora specifically needs for those 3 months, then I'm more than happy to support giving it to them. The purpose of this motion is I did not want to see a pause, so I wanted to reflect what the necessities were, and I think that the last time we had discussed this, we wanted to have a breakdown of what exactly it is they need for those 3 months to continue. I don't feel I had enough information to break down this is what they need for specifically for the next 3 months. Rather, we had a roundabout number reflecting an entire year. If it's more than $10,000, I'm happy to support that, but I just feel that overall $25,000 did not really reflect maybe truly what they needed.
Thank you, Councillor Gilliland. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I don't know what the correct figure is, but I also do not want to see a pause in certain essential services that they provide, and I don't know if our director can give us a more accurate figure to that or add anything to the discussion about what might be needed in order not to see a pause in essential programs. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. McDougall.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. To me, I would need to look at the actions expected for year 4, 2019, looking at those items, then determine the specific objectives. Ultimately, the delay, a pause, we wouldn't want that to affect booking of dates, booking of facilities, promoting of certain activities or opportunities that are proposed. So as far as a figure, again, I can't help you with exactly what I think is appropriate at this point, aside from what they've presented as their annual budget and breaking that down. Therefore, as far as support goes, I think that there is distinct efforts for administrative support to help make sure those activities do proceed in 2019. To what degree, I would need a little bit more time.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I certainly agree with Councillor Gallo's point of view about doing anything non-essential, granting any or making any budget decisions outside of the actual budget process unless it's essential. But on the other hand, we have an initiative that has been going for 3 years, and they do have momentum, and I wouldn't want to just stop that in its tracks. So I don't know whether 10,000 is the right amount, but I'm willing to say that it is, and agree to approving that.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Just want to make a couple of quick comments. Actually, one question through me to Ms. McDougall. You get used to that for 4 years. But Ms. McDougall, it's my understanding from reading the reports and what's come back to us is that when we asked for a breakdown of the funding of whether what's for the sport plan and what is funding for Sport Aurora, that essentially what's come back to us is that all the funds are for the sport plan. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, yes, it is. So they've confirmed that the entire amount is for the implementation of the sport plan. There isn't a separate piece that is just sport plan versus Sport Aurora. It is all sport plan.
Thank you. And as you mentioned, I'll just kind of reaffirm this with our CAO. If we decided to take a pause on funding in regards to the sport plan, obviously we all think that the events are good events. They're great events for our town. They promote sports, especially with our children. So I'm wondering, would staff be able to provide administrative assistance leading up to those events to make sure that those events can continue? Possibly.
Well, to you, Mr. Mayor, I guess it depends what those events are and what administrative support actually fully entails. If you go back to the beginning of my understanding, anyway, because it was before my time, but if you go back to the beginning when some of these events were started, the town's only role was basically to sponsor it, to make sure that they were financially broke even, and that the effort, I guess, was more or less a volunteer effort. So we don't really have a full knowledge of what, if we're replacing that entire volunteer effort, then we could have some staffing issues depending on the timing of it and the other events that we do. So we'd have to have a better understanding of what's actually involved in some of those events if we were to take it on. But if we were to assist, then again, we just have to define what that assist means. We'd certainly want to see those events continue, and we just have to find the way to work with Sport Aurora to make sure that they happen.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Personally, I think that we do need to take a pause, and I think we need to reevaluate on how we go about implementing the sport plan. The sport plan speaks to hiring a sport development officer. It speaks to creating a sport council or sport board, and I think that there's been some conversation that that's the direction that we need to move to. And so I think that I'm uncomfortable, as Councillor Gallo mentioned as well, that advancing an organization, a user group, when we're not sure whether we're going to move in that direction. And so I think that if we take that pause, we reevaluate, we have staff come back to us during budget, which is, we're only talking about 2 months away, and in February, and we can deal with how and what those options are and how we can move forward. For all we know, we could agree that Sport Aurora is the way we're going to go in regards to implementing that sport plan again for year 4 and 5, or we could have those other options that say, you know what, we can do something different that we believe will provide better value for our residents. And at the end of the day, I think that's what we're all looking to do, is to provide the best possible service at the best possible price for our taxpayers and our residents. So that would be my way of going about this, but I'll leave it in the hands of council here. But I won't be in favor of the amendment that's in front of us right now. Councillor Gilliland, you can speak one more time just to the fact that it's your motion. So,
okay. Good.
You're good?
As far as that limit, is there a way that has to have a number, right? I have to have a number. I can't say up to a specific. If, say, staff were to come back and what they actually need, is there some language that we could say as opposed to putting a hard, fast number? Is there a language that we could use, saying upset limit of amount determined by Sport Aurora that's required essentially for those 3 months?
Well, I would suggest that if you look at the motion that's in front of us, it says to an upset limit of 10,000. So it's not a hard number. It's up to that. So my understanding from what I'm hearing around the table is other than Councillor Gartner, most people are not comfortable with that number or up to that number. They would like to see something different. So I would just suggest I'll go to Councillor Kim if unless you have anything else to say.
Nope.
Okay. Councillor Kim, and then I'll call the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in. My view is that we are essentially putting a freeze to, in terms of the funding for potentially, all of our partners, at least for temporarily until we get a bigger picture of town finances, our what the partnership looks like with ourselves and the other organizations. And I think 3 years ago when I put out the cultural partners motion where we would have a stable delivery model that would allow our partners to think long-term and have steady funding without having to come back to council every year. I believe that's making some headway. Before I continue through you, Mr. Mayor, if Mr. Nadarasny can give us just a quick update as to where that is, because I believe that can play a part in terms of how funding might look like with Sport Aurora as well.
Mr. CAO.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure which mechanism you're. So we're doing a cultural services review.
Yeah.
Which is looking at all aspects of our partnerships with the community in terms of the cultural funding that we provide. So that doesn't have a direct interface with the Sport Aurora, but that program is moving forward, and we expect to have direction in the first quarter about how to move forward with cultural funding. We're also trying to also manage at the same time the possibility of having expanded Library Square, and what the new facility there and the new resources there will mean for that investment that this council will make in the cultural sphere. So it's all kind of one big project that we're trying to bring both to council at the same time, because the new proposed expansion of the Church Street School provides us an opportunity to step back and look at all the groups that are using those resources now, including the town itself with some of its own cultural activities. So that's the cultural piece. There's not so much directly on the horizon with the Sport Aurora, except that if we are instructed to sort of give pause to the plan as presented by Sport Aurora, then we would ask many of those same questions of the sport, the work we do in sport, and we would come back to council with something that perhaps delineates what's best to be done by the town, what's best to be done by Sport Aurora, and what's best to be done by other groups in town with an interest in sport and moving the sport plan forward.
Councillor Kim?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Nadarasny. I do recall that during one of the phases of the cultural partners was that we would identify who are our cultural partners, and we did decide that Sport Aurora, or sport, it's a culture, but we wouldn't include that for this purpose. But my hope is that, I mean, in hindsight, we could have included them, but I think whatever results come out in the first quarter, I think we can leverage the comments and the solutions provided in that report in terms of a spillover to Sport Aurora. So that's what I'm hoping for. But I think just going back to Sport Aurora, even though certainly temporarily discontinuing the funding will certainly be cause a headwind to the sport plan for sure. But at the same time, continuing to fund something that might not be leveraged in the future is also a headwind on the other side. So they kind of cancel each other out, and when that happens, I would be in favor of ceasing those activities, then continuing on and them not being used. So for those reasons, I would not be for the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Councillor Gallo, second up.
Thank you. I just wanted to bring some context, and I wasn't going to bring this up, and I thought it was sufficient that my view was solely, not spending money before we go through a thorough process of budgeting that money. But I did want to draw to your attention, after copious hours of reading, thank you very much for all that information. What it did do is raise many, many more questions. The KPIs, I don't know about the rest of you, but I didn't get a strong, clear message of whether we achieved what we wanted to achieve or not. The lines were slightly blurred between funding for the sports plan, Activate Aurora, and Sport Aurora. To me, all of those were blurred, and I did not get a concrete sense of the separation of those aspects. In addition to that, and again, I mentioned it last week, there are organizations in this town that receive funds and go through some serious hoops. And I keep repeating that because it is the truth and it's accurate and it should be that way. I quickly read the agreement with the organization, and item 25 speaks to during the term of the agreement and for any renewal period, the recipient shall maintain readily available in its public website the following information: annual budgets, financial statements relating to the three latest years, with audited reports where applicable. They're not on the website. Annual reports, they're not on the website. Notices of upcoming public meetings, annual general meetings, it's not on the website. Email contacts for the president, vice president, board, it's not on the website. And I'm trying to provide context in terms of how do we gauge organizations that we fund. And to me, there are quite a few gaps that I'm not satisfied with, and that's an additional reason why I want to push pause and make sure we're following up with our agreements, and that the money that that we spend, the taxpayers' monies, that we're getting the best bang for our buck.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo. Any other comments or questions on this one? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. I'll vote on your tabulators. That fails 4-2. Anyone want to put another motion on the floor? Council? We don't have to. Want just a motion to receive? Oh, Councillor Gallo?
I put alternative number 3. Direct staff not to extend the Sports Aurora funding agreement resulting in the agreement concluding as of December 31st, and direct staff to report on alternative delivery models for sports initiatives.
I get a seconder? It's number 3, the option number 3 that was in the report. Anybody going to second that? I'll give Councillor Kim a minute to read it. Actually, Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Gallo, can you just reread that just for Councillor Humphreys' benefit?
Council may direct staff not to extend the Sport Aurora funding agreement resulting in the agreement concluding as of December 31st, 2018, and direct staff to report on alternative delivery models for sports initiatives.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo. Do I get a seconder on that? before you second it? If you want, second it for discussion, and then you can ask a question. Okay, Councillor Kim seconds it. Councillor Gallo, would you like to start?
No, I think I've said enough.
All right, thank you. Councillor Kim, I know you have something to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I seconded just because I wanted to pose a question on this, was that, so alternative 3, would that be essentially it leads me to believe that there's permanently, potentially no funding. We're not just temporarily ceasing funding until our budget deliberations are over, but this option 3 is telling me that we're going potentially in a totally new direction, and it's going to be blue skying the relationship. Is that correct? Staff,
I'll answer that for a sec, but if staff can correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding of what's in front of us is that staff would bring back options. Those options, I mean, personally, I'd like to see a date on that, so probably within the budget timeframe. So we would get those options during budget, and then at budget, we can deliberate on how we would move forward, whether that's in a new direction or whether that would be to begin funding Sport Aurora once again. And so if I'm wrong, maybe Mr. Seo, you can correct me on that.
Mr. Mayor, no, that's correct. The only thing I would add to what you said is that it could also allow for a mix of some things that the town does and some things that Sport Aurora does.
Thank you. Councillor Kim, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thompson.
I'm going to take a different approach through you to our clerk, Mr. Duran. Mr. Duran, if this were to pass and at budget time council decides to continue its relationship with Sport Aurora and enter into a funding agreement, would that not be a reconsideration of what's before us? Because it says not to extend.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
It's the existing agreement.
Yeah, if we look at it as the existing agreement and we could put another agreement in place, I don't think we would need a reconsideration motion for that. So I think all options would still be on the table, despite the motion on the floor.
Councillor Thompson?
That's good to hear, because I wouldn't want it to be a reconsideration. I hear council and their concerns regarding the budget process, as well as their concerns regarding just the future of the sports plan and wanting to hit a pause while we revisit it, look at some of the key deliverables, ask certain questions about it, and I think that's appropriate at this new stage of council, and I'm okay with that pause. I guess my biggest concern really is just there's some tremendous work that they do, and we spoke about it earlier with regards to the Breakfast of Champions and some of the volunteer recognition events, and I just wouldn't want to jeopardize whatever tasks that need to be done for those events during the first 3 months. And so, I personally, if there's some way to just modify this so at least we can support those events. I don't necessarily want us to run those events, but I'm just saying provide a little bit of support to Sport Aurora, or if they are really in jeopardy, then staff would come back to us and report to us in January with regards to that. I just don't want to see those events end. And so that's my concern about going this route or putting a pause on it, is just what is that impact to those 2 events? And I'd like to know that. It's unfortunate that I don't have an answer to that question. It is true that in the past they have run those events prior to entering into a funding agreement with the town, but now it is kind of all rolled in together, and I'm not clear on whether or not they would continue or not. My hope is they do continue, and so like I said, I'm fine that some of the non-essential stuff gets put on pause, but I would like to see some sort of support given to those events. That's my comment.
Mr. Seo, I'll let our CEO answer that.
To you, Mr. Mayor, I think what we'd be prepared to do to address that would, the best way I think forward would be for staff to come back perhaps in January with a plan, and we'd look perhaps at the activities that you're talking about that would occur between, say, January 1st and even June 1st to allow appropriate amount of time, and come back with a staff report on, after consulting with Sport Aurora, on what assistance, if any, they need from the town to make sure those events continue, and we come back with another report and seek whatever support is needed from council.
I'd appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gallo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I just get confirmation? I thought I read and I thought I heard confirmation tonight that the entire funding of this is for the sports plan.
Correct.
So if we remove this funding, essentially the sports plan stops. Sport Aurora doesn't stop. They continue. All those events that we're talking about would continue. They wouldn't be impacted. This funding doesn't go to that. Could I just get reconfirmation of that? Is my statement accurate?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, the entire amount is for the sport plan. And to be specific, within the budget that was presented, although the Breakfast of Champions and the volunteer recognition are included in the outline of the budget, the summary, those are ultimately demonstrated as revenue or neutral cost impact, because they were events held and offered by Sport Aurora. Therefore, with the expenses and the income or the revenue being ticket sales, donations, or sponsorships is typically how they fund that event or those events. They would not cease based on what were being presented. The fact that they were included in the tasks, the objectives, is because the sport plan speaks to them as part of an important piece to the community as it relates to sport. But the actual costing and the funding is a separate entity.
Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. That's what I thought. And if we look at our agreement, none of those events are part of the deliverables in Schedule B of the agreement. None of them. So doing this shouldn't stop any of those other events. And I'm not suggesting by promoting this that Sport Aurora doesn't continue to do the good things that they do. I'm concerned about the sports plan, the implementation of the sports plan, and funding something outside of a budget.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and apologies for being late. I just in terms of this amendment, my one concern is that Sport Aurora had a role to play, a very big role to play in implementing our sport plan. I believe we're in year 3 of it. And I know what we want to do. I thought we mentioned pause last week, and I understand where Councillor Gallo is coming from. We'll stop here and we'll decide during budget deliberations what we're going to do and what involvement Sport Aurora will have at that time, if and what other alternatives. But I don't know. Do we have I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but it will help me with this motion, this amendment. Do we know what other alternative sports initiatives we can do if we stop this right now, where we've already sort of delivered? We've asked Sport Aurora to provide this, to us or to the town. Do we already have a strategic initiative for how we do it without their input? Like, is this what we're saying? The intent of this motion is we'll stop right now and then we'll figure it out in 2019. Is that what we're doing here? Through you, Mr. Mayor, can someone answer that? Like, I understand what we're doing. We're not sure about funding until we get our 2019 budget done. But do we want Sport Aurora to play a role in our sport plan, or do we have other ways of doing it, alternative ways of delivering it?
Mr. Seo.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think going back to the original plan that was passed by Council, it contemplated the possible addition of staff resources to move the plan forward, or other arrangements to get it done. So in the first iteration, when Sport Aurora first got involved with it, the decision then was by giving the funds to Sport Aurora and having them move it forward, we would not have to add staff resources to move the sport plan forward. Admittedly, since then it's evolved, it's bigger, it's got some momentum, and so the pause, if I understand the rationale behind the pause, and the result that we would bring during the budget process would be to relook at that original position and decide, is it best to move it forward with staff? Is it best to move it forward with someone else? Is it best to do a hybrid of those and do some things with someone like Sport Aurora? There's also the whole question of a sport council that will also have to be, we're at the point in the sport development of the sport plan that now that is becoming one of the next deliverables. And so there's another debate, frankly, that council has to have about how it wants to even have sport organized in the community. So that's separate and beyond. So our intent would be to sort of package all that up and come forward with some options for council to deal with, and the required funding to make them happen.
Perfect. Thank you, through Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
Humphreys.
I appreciate that's a great answer. So my next question is: do we believe we can have that type of information ready to this council during budget deliberations? We don't want this Aurora Sport Plan to stop in mid-track, right? So just wondering, do you think we'll be in a position to have all that good, solid information before us that we could make a good decision? Because we need to have this plan fulfilled, absolutely, right?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would certainly be my goal and an attempt to have everything ready for council in February. That would be, to me, I've already actioned our manager to have a look at some opportunities if this is the way council's direction was going to go. So if that's the case, I think we could hit the ground running and be ready for February with some information that could help council make an informed decision.
Okay.
Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just my only concern, and I don't know how large of a concern it really is we'll get that information. We'll have budget deliberations probably finish around April, May, and that's when the sport plan, I think, movement towards fulfilling the rest of the plan starts. So I just want to make sure that, we're probably going to be 6 months behind deliverables where Sport Aurora's work in motion. So I guess for me it's, I understand what we're doing here because it's certainly budget time, but I don't know if we have we're not going to have a clear understanding where we're going forward with a bunch of these things. So I need to think about it for a little bit longer. I like the pause a little more than the end and start again. And I did hear it's not a reconsideration, which is good, but let me hear some others around the table and then thank you.
Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you. I just kind of want to say again that I still think that the community deserves some sort of transition period for a Sport Aurora initiative, moving into a sport council, sport board, or whatever it may be, and just cutting it dry. I just kind of feel like we're losing that momentum, as Councillor Humphrey had said. That's why I wanted to see some sort of action carried through Sport Aurora, since 100% of pretty much everything that they do is considered part of the sport plan. And I just feel it's not in their best interest to do nothing. I think doing something is better than doing nothing. What that looks like on Sport Aurora's side, continue on, I'm not 100% sure, but I won't be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Gilliland. Actually, I just got a question for Councillor Gallo. Are you okay if we add in a specific date of that late February budget meeting?
Fine with that. We'd have to revisit this in March anyway.
So do we need to, Mr. Clerk, do we need to add that date, or is it okay to have staff just understand that we want that to come? Mr. CEO?
Through Mr. Mayor, in order to effectively deal with this in budget, we have to have that plan on the table during the budget period, and the operating budget discussion is February into March. So,
thank you. And so, as I stated earlier, I'm in favor of this. I think that we do need to take that pause because we need to reevaluate. And I think moving forward, as Councillor Kim kind of touched on a little bit, I think as the first year of this term, I think that some of the discussion has been that as we move forward, especially during budget and during those deliberations, that we're going to look at holding everyone to no increase, so we can reevaluate how we move forward with any funding to any organization, any user group, and put in place the proper policies to make sure that the residents of this community are getting the utmost value for every dollar that we spend. So I'm expecting that that's what's going to occur during our budget deliberations. And so it's not about holding one organization over the other, like to a stronger standard. Everyone needs to be held to that same standard. So I'm in favor of moving forward with this. And so without anyone else putting their name forward for any comments or questions, I will call the vote using your tabulators. And that carries 5-2. So, councillors, we will move. Councillor Gardner?
Mr. Mayor, may
We have quite a lot of people in the audience who I believe are waiting for your motion. If
we just have one more item.
Okay.
So we'll move to the regular agenda, R1, 2018 interim forecast update. I need someone to move to receive this for information. Moved by Councillor Humphrey, seconded by Councillor Gilliland. Any comments or questions on this report? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Using your tabulator. That carries. Moving to the motion. Let's move to the motion. I will pass the chair to Deputy Mayor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I have someone move this motion, please?
I'll move as is.
Seconder, Councillor Humphreys. Any questions or comments on the motion, please?
Hit my button.
Mayor Marakis can speak first.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. You know, when this came out, there was lots of concern right across, I think, many municipalities. And talking with a few of my colleagues, there's been some concern. Some have thought that, let's wait for some more information. I believe that we need to get out front, make a statement, let everyone know, especially within our community. We're not, while we encourage jobs and businesses to come to our community, and we want them to come to our community, I don't think any of us want it at the expense of our environment, at the expense of any safety measures that have been put in place by previous governments, and to overturn and allow municipalities to be exempt from these legislative requirements, I think is a bad thing, not only for our community, but I think for the province in general. I think it's important that we put forward this motion. We let the province know that we're not in favor of this. Ultimately, I think that I know each and every one of you, I think, to a certain extent, and I know that we would never look at allowing for planning for an exemption like this to happen, to occur. And so, but I think the concern lies with what other municipalities would do. What would the neighboring municipalities to us do? And so that's why we need to send that message to the province and say that we're not in favor of this, we oppose this. And that's exactly what this motion says. It says that we oppose it. We will also be sending it to all the MPPs, to all the other municipalities, and to AMO, similarly as we did when we looked at reforming the OMB. And that worked out very well as we were at the forefront and all the other municipalities got together. And we know that when all elected officials across the province get together and we start that grassroots movement, that's how we affect change. And so that's what this will do. And so I hope that my colleagues around this table will pass this, and we'll pass this unanimously, and we'll stand up, we'll go to the committee, we'll speak, we'll delegate there, and we'll make sure that we are heard at the provincial level. And once again, Aurora will be at the forefront.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much to Mr. Mayor for bringing this forward. Absolutely support this 100%. I did want to ask if there's a way that we could include as well. I know you mentioned oppose very clearly. The very bottom item, be it for the resolve that a copy of this motion be sent to the Association of Municipalities and all other municipalities for their consideration. If we could put a line in here that to use this as the other municipalities as a draft for their motion, so that it makes it easy for them to just plug in their municipality's name under item 1, be further resolved that the town of, that Aurora Town Council, that they can put their actual municipal name in there, and that they use this as a draft, and they can do the same thing, and it just makes it easier for them. They just follow our lead. So I don't know if that's possible that we can put in a line in there that, to use this as their draft. Up to you. I just feel that it's something that we can get it going quickly.
Thank you, Councillor Kim, and through you. My experience is that that's exactly what municipalities do. When this, if this is placed on a public agenda in other Ontario municipalities, it'll be for support, and so they'll either support it or they'll bring forward their own motion, similar to this, or as they see fit to echo the sentiments.
Perfect. That's great. Then can we actually add in there that it be resolved and asked to be put on their agenda? The very last line. I just want to make sure that they understand and put it on their agenda. We're asking them as a neighboring municipality within Ontario that they actually, we're not forcing them, but asking them as a consideration to put it on their agenda. What I'm trying to say is let's get this moving quickly and be the leading municipality, as the mayor has already done this very quickly for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. I think that the procedure bylaw of municipalities dictates this, so I don't know if we should presume to tell them or other municipalities. I think I do understand what you're saying. I think that it, just by sending it to all the municipalities, what you want will happen.
Okay. So in conclusion, I'm very much in support of this motion, and thank you for bringing this forward.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. Just following while we're on point 4, could we also add the Minister of the Environment and Aurora's MPPs, Michael Parsa and Christine Elliott? Huh. Thank you. And I thank you, Mr. Mayor, for putting this forward. I know a lot of us ran on environmental platforms, and this is without a doubt contrary to that, as the protections in the Clean Water Act, the Greenbelt Act, the Oak Ridges Marine Act, Places to Grow Act, it can override all of those. So it's very important that we send a strong message not only to the province but to our community. And I think from what I've heard from you and the things we've spoken about, I know you're really serious about environmental protection. So I was looking at one of the clauses in the information we got from Susan Walmer, and I think it would be very important to add, maybe it would be a second replace number 2 and just push those farther down, that notwithstanding the further adoption of Bill 66, the town of Aurora will not exercise the powers granted to it in Schedule 10 or any other successor sections or schedules. I think it's crucial that we send this message, and I think that it would be well supported by the community to do that. So do I need to make a motion to add that, Mr. Clerk? So I would like to make a motion that says that notwithstanding the future adoption of Bill 66, the town of Aurora will not exercise the powers granted to it in Schedule 10 or any successor sections or schedules.
Mr. Clerk? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Humphrey seconds it. Any comments on the amendment, please? Councillor Thompson?
I think my only comment really has to do with the any other. I mean, we all know how bills work. That's past first reading. It still has to go through another stages. There could be some amendments. There could be some changes along the way. We've also received communication from AMO that talks about all the various components of that bill, and there's a wide number of them. And so I'm leery to move forward on something that says any other, because I don't know what any other really means at this point, and it could change. And so that kind of vagueness is difficult to support.
Councillor.
Council, I think that should be, Councillor Thompson is quite right. It should read to Schedule 10 or any successor sections or schedules to pass open for business planning bylaws. So it's not a blanket statement. It's just anything that has to do with open for business and overriding the environmental protections. That was my intent, not to leave it wide open like that. You're quite correct. That would be a mistake.
Mr. Clerk, can you rephrase what Councillor Gardner just verged?
I think what's on screen is correct.
Okay.
Name sections or call them different things.
On the amendment, please. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think pretty much the motion speaks for itself. It says that we oppose this. And I think that if we pass it, we're saying that we oppose it and that we wouldn't be looking at amending it or giving powers and allowing to exercise for an open business planning bylaw. We're not, I've stated that clearly. I think council, by passing this motion, are stating that clearly. I don't think it needs to be a clause within the motion.
Okay, if there are no further comments, Councillor Gardner, for a second time on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know you like your motion the way it is, but I think adding that extra clause just hits the spot because it says exactly what we're not going to do, and it sends the message to our community exactly what we are not going to do. If I also could say that in the second line, your first point, what we're saying here is that Town Council opposes plan changes to the Planning Act and the proposed Bill 66 that may allow for an open for business, but I believe that is what the bill is called, open for business. So I think, yeah. I don't think it would hurt to add that point, and I think it would make it clear. So perhaps you'll humor me, Mr. Mayor.
Comments? No? Okay, so then if everyone's okay, then let's call the vote on the amendment. All those in favor, please check your tabulators. Okay, the amendment passes 4-3. Back to the main motion as amended. Any comments or questions? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Just following up on my comment about AMO, they did send a communication out saying that this bill is now open for comment on the various sections, not just Section 10, but the entirety of the bill. And I just want to know, since the closing date is January 20th, we won't have another council meeting between now and the closing date of the comment period. You know, will staff also provide comments on the bill through you to, I guess, I'm not going to say Mr. Ramuno, Mr. Nadarozny.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I suppose the best form of our comment would be to forward the motion that has been passed by council. It probably wouldn't be appropriate for us to take any different position other than that, I would think.
Well, as I mentioned, I mean, the bill covers a wide variety of items, not all related to planning, and so there may be other sections that may be pertinent to provide comments to. And so if staff can also look at that and provide some comment and some direction, that would be helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. I know this is not the best time to wordsmith, but there were two sections of the whereases that just add context to it, and it doesn't really change the direction, but there are two that I feel are important, and while you speak to some of the facts, the two that I was looking at are whereas the Greenbelt has protected 1.8 million acres of farmland, local food supplies, the headwaters of our rivers, and important forests and wildlife habitats for over 12 years, and the one below that, whereas a permanent greenbelt is an important part of the planning for sustainable communities, protecting farmlands and the viability of agriculture. The agriculture part, I hold true to my heart, and I'd like to move that we add those two whereases to the motion.
Okay, is there a seconder to the amendment? Councillor Gardner. Comments on the amendment? Okay, if there are no comments, okay. Just have to wait a minute for the amendment to go on the screen. Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to ask Councillor Gallo just some clarification in terms of are we to include that the Greenbelt has protected, or are these to be included as whereas sections as part of the motion? Okay, sorry, I misunderstood you then. We don't amend the whereas clauses. It's up to the person who moves the motion to put those in. So it's only the operative clauses, the everything there after therefore be it resolved, that would be available for amendment. And my apologies for not immediately fixing this.
Okay. So we can't vote on the amendment then if it's a whereas. So we're going to go back to the original amendment?
Yeah, it's back to Councillor Gallo.
Okay. Okay, so Councillor Gallo, go back to you then. The whereases cannot be amended. Did you have any other comments?
Does the entire thing not get communicated to? Is this not going to be in our minutes? And whatever we sent to the various organizations, does the whole package not get sent out? It seems odd to me we wouldn't. But I'll leave it up to the mover. I mean, it's just additional information.
So the person does the motion. I'm sorry, through you, Mr. Clerk, Mr. Deputy Mayor. My apologies. My understanding is the whereas must be like a friendly amendment to the person who does the original motion in general. I can't agree to that, right? My understanding is like you're changing my motion. It has to be a friendly by the person, the originator of the. Am I getting this wrong?
Mr. Clerk.
Would you mind, Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just don't. The whereases are not up for amendment for council. It's the operative clauses that are.
Okay, so we can't. Like our clerk's saying, we're not supposed to. So.
I think all the friendly amendments were in the therefore clauses.
Oh, okay. So it's all right. I don't mind. It's just we can't because we're being instructed that's not allowed. Right, Mr. Clerk? Okay. However, I'm not. It's not my turn yet. Okay. Because I could add to Councillor Gallo's. Sorry, my apologies, guys. I guess I was not being asked that. Sorry. Okay. Okay, it's my turn to speak to the final motion. Okay. Yes, so thank you through Mr. Chair. Again, I agree with this motion wholeheartedly. I think it's something that's very important for our town to move forward. I don't think we need to add anything further from my perspective. The very, very clear point is we are opposed as a town of Aurora. We're opposed, and I think that's the operative word. We could absolutely try to fortify it further, but we're not saying anything at all throughout this whole motion that says we're anywhere interested in even considering it or acknowledging it. So I think it was really important to some of the amendments that were done earlier and to the originator, the mayor, that we follow, that we move forward quickly, and we extend this information to those indicated here on the motion. In terms of the one, and I don't know if this is appropriate time to ask this, so my apologies, Mr. Chair. I do want us to have an opportunity that Councillor Thompson brought up earlier, that all input is provided to the to AMO, not just this motion, which is very important, but our personal feedback. Can we provide that in general to one of the directors or to the CAO? Maybe that's something important that the municipalities can see what each of us feel in terms of the seriousness of this bill. Is that allowed? I mean, I remember we had this issue before and we missed our chance on another important item. So,
Mr. Nadarosny?
Through Mr. Chair, I don't think it'd be appropriate for staff to sort of just collect the opinions of individual councillors and forward those as the position of the town or of council. So I would suggest that either individually councillors would write to AMO, or the only other way would be to bring something before a council meeting before the 20th, the deadline date, so that council can endorse the position.
That's fair. You know what? I'll submit my own information. I think that's really important. So thank you. That's all.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. Just so I understand, if with all the whereases, because I know that I've had whereases changed in my motions. So if I agree to it, I can people can change the whereases. Councillor Peary loved changing my whereases. I know, but it's possible. So just to be clear, it has to be with the permission of the mover. Is that what you're saying?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that I would say that's proper. The whereases are the councillor or the mayor's reasons for bringing the motion forward, and it wouldn't be fair to change them without their permission.
Thank you. I got a Christmas card from Michael Parsa. I think we could just individually let our MPPs know how we feel as apart from council. The other thing, and it follows on what Councillor Thompson said, apparently Bill 66 is huge, and I think it's going to be important for us. So could we have, I think we have a person on staff actually who his title is Special Projects. I mean, seriously, he's already retired? Aha, and Mr. Amuno is going to be leaving us shortly. Well, at some point, if it's within the realm of possibility, it would be really good to know what this bill actually means to us and for us.
Thank you. Before I let Mayor Marakis close off, seeing that this is his motion, my comment would be that, the Greenbelt plan, which was formulated back in 2005, I mean, it's a cornerstone of the Greater Golden Horseshoe growth plan, in which we've been operating in, over the last, 14 years or so. And, a lot of other established practices have occurred since then. There's a marked delineation between agricultural land and urban land. The builders understood where they could build and where they could not build. The municipalities created their official plan based on the existing policies. So for the province to change all of that now and have it really be helter-skelter, because some municipalities will make the necessary changes to have a quote-unquote business-friendly land development policy, and others will not. So there's no consistency. So whereas prior there was order from top to down, now you have pretty well you do what you want. That's not very orderly, and I don't think that serves the citizens very well. And one thing I really appreciated about the Greenbelt plan was that back in 2005, and I remember this quite clearly, and I quote this a lot, in that they consulted with a lot of environmental agencies, and they said, how much canopy do we require so that our greenhouse output can be satiated by the canopy, and so all these groups did hundreds of days or whatever amount of days it took for them to come up with that calculation, and hence we have today's borders. And so for all that work and all these policies and practices to be put out of place by in this one bill is unfortunate, and I think we owe it to our residents and owe it to ourselves to put this motion forward, proposed by Mayor Marakis, and I thank him for putting this forward. So with that, last comments by Mayor Marakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd ask if we could separate Clause 5 as part of the vote. And then just to let council know, I do have a meeting with Deputy Premier Christine Elliott, our MPP, on Friday, and this is one of the topics that I will be bringing up and letting her know specifically how strongly we oppose the changes that are going to be maybe imposed within Bill 66. And I've also reached out to our other MPP, Michael Parsa, as well, so I can have a sit down and discuss this with him as well. So those conversations will happen. And I can assure everyone that we here in Aurora are opposed to allowing for these amendments to the protections for our environment. So, Mr. Chair.
So with that, we'll go to a vote with our tabulators on the main motion as amended.
1 through 4.
We're going to vote separately? Okay, so we're going to vote with our tabulators for clause 1 to 4. Okay, that passes unanimously. Okay, now we'll vote on the clause number 5. Okay, that carries 5-2. So with that, I'll pass the chair back to Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kim. Council, we can go for our break, but we are just looking at new business and public service announcements. Do you want to take the break, or would you like to continue? Councillor Gallo?
I made an error, and maybe it's a bit of a newbie. When you had referred to R1, my reference was number 7 in the agenda, and I had questions and comments regarding that. If it's too late, it's too late, and that's okay.
Councillor Gallo, as you are a newbie in this term, let me see, Mr. Clerk, can we go back and revisit this just to allow for a few questions from Councillor Gallo, since he has a few questions that he would like to get answered? Maybe without a vote, maybe just, actually, Councillor Gallo, how about you bring forward those questions under new business?
Sure.
Is that fine?
Yep.
Okay. So does everyone want to just continue and just get through this? We got new business and public service announcements. So with that being said, we're starting new business, and we'll start to my left. So Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. Let me just find my notes. I went back a few years just to give me a sense of what kind of happened in the past. And 2016, there was a similar time frame, kind of last meeting, there was a memorandum from the director, and I think there was a small deficit, somewhere around $50,000 or $60,000 projected. And it didn't speak to the water, wastewater, storm water. And last year, there was a surplus of, and I know you don't have it in front of you, but you'll take my word for it, of about $500,000. And I just quickly looked at the line items, and particularly water, wastewater, stormwater. And one of the paragraphs, and I'll read it to you, it's the same last year as it was this year. The water and wastewater budgets are comprised primarily of fixed operational costs. So they're fixed costs funded by the net proceeds from the sale of water and wastewater services. These fixed operational costs include staff and service maintenance costs related to maintaining the infrastructure systems, water quality testing, and the billing and customer service functions. They're not impacted by the volume of water used. They're fixed costs. And my question, I guess, to staff, both from last year and this year, last year there were significant variances in the operating costs. And I'll just rhyme off some. Water administration and billing was the approved budget was 1.3 million. We came in at 1.6. Water system operations was 1.4 million, and we came in at 824,000. So nearly 41% under budget. Water system operations was budgeted at 945,000, and we came in at 189,000. So an 80% less than what we budgeted. There's similar situation now if you look at your agenda. And these are, as the statement said, fixed items. And in terms of stormwater services, the administration billing was accurate to the dollar, 105,000, and projecting 105,000. However, the others, on page 11 of 11, the operation and maintenance, our budget was 1.1 million, and we are projecting to be at 579,000, so 47% under budget, almost $500,000 under budget. Administration and billing is dollar for dollar. If you look above water services, operation and maintenance, 1.4 million. We're coming in at 1 million, almost 30%, 427,000. So my question is, if they are, through you, Mr. Mayor, if they are fixed costs, how come we have these variances year after year? I get it if we've made an error or whatever, but why is this happening in multiple years? I'm not sure who to direct this to.
I'm looking at either Mr. Gartner. Oh, Mr. Gartner, if you want to give it a shot, and then if we have to, we'll try someone else.
Yeah, well, I think the terminology fixed cost here doesn't mean it's exactly the same cost every year. It just means it's not directly impacted by the volume of water. So one part of this, for example, would be maintenance contracts. So maintenance isn't specifically driven by the volume of water consumption. It can be influenced by other sub-matters such as delays in contracting or something of that nature would produce a savings in that regard. So the fixed terminology is more one that's not directly driven by water volumes. So it's not like if it's 10,000, it's $10,000 every year. Does that help?
Councillor Gallo?
I get that, but I'm not understanding why the drastic variances from year to year are if the consumption, if you look at the consumption from year to year, they're not that different. Yet the fixed costs are significantly different. And it just doesn't make sense to me. Unless there's something else in there that I'm not seeing that drive those costs up or down, some significantly down, some to the tune of 50% of our budget. Either it's a budgeting thing or it's a tracking thing, or I'm not sure. But it raised a red flag to me. We can certainly I'd be curious to see how these figures pan out at year end. I didn't look last year to see the comparable between what we forecasted and what we ended up. But I will be looking at it when we go through budget to see, are we budgeting properly? So if there's any additional information, I'm happy to hear it. If not, I'll leave it at that.
Councillor, I'm gonna allow our CAO to try to elaborate a little bit further on that. Give you some more clarity, maybe.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So further to Mr. Gartner's explanation, so some of those things that would be included in that section would be water main breaks or other activities that would vary from year to year. So they would drive those costs up and down. Also, there's a bigger factor, frankly, for operations, as we've learned over the last couple of years, is that lots of times there was work that was scheduled to be done in terms of maintenance that wasn't done. It was the contracts weren't let, the contracts basically were fulfilled. But that work should be done, and we will catch up with that work. So that also causes some of the variance. So we'd have to break it down. I mean, I'm giving you some examples. I'm not sure which one is the bigger one, but whereas the variable costs are the ones that are direct related to flow of water. So as the water as our water billing goes up, so goes our cost for water from the region and so on. So there is a fair amount of variability in what is called the fixed costs, but those are just some of the areas. If we have more or less breaks, we have repairs that we make to the system, and again, not so much last year, but the year before, I know scheduled maintenance was a big variable where we had a work programs that was proposed and budgeted and basically not carried out, and so that shows up as an operating surplus.
Councillor Gallo?
Just as a follow-up, and I'll leave it. Maybe I'd be looking at during the budget process to have either a reporting of what happened last year, if we're anticipating, similar dollar amounts or more. I'd like to get a sense of, those kind of details. Why we're continuing the same amount on a line item when we came in significantly less. And I'm happy to go through those through the budget process. But those kind of things I would be interested in seeing. Thank you.
And Councillor Gallo, maybe I can suggest that you sit down with our CAO or Mr. Gartner and just go a little bit more in depth in this, and so you'll feel a little bit more comfortable maybe as we get the budget with what's previously occurred. So thank you for your comments. Councillor Thompson, new business? Councillor Gartner, new business?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I went to the Lake Simcoe board meeting last week, and there is a big concern on the part of the CAO, Mr. Walters, that with respect that the provincial government is possibly cutting the funding for the Ontario Drinking Water Source Protection Program and going to place it at the municipalities. And he's concerned about this for several reasons, but mostly because of the safety issue. I think the municipality should be concerned about it for the safety issue and because of the cost. Anyway, he wrote a letter, and Aurora was included on December 6th, asking that the member municipalities weigh in on this and send a letter to the province. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Clerk, do you have a copy of that letter? If not, I'll give it to you. I don't think we should be copying it word for word. I'd be glad to sit with the clerk and give him some ideas that I got from the meeting. But thank you. But it's very important. I mean, if it passes, potentially we could go back to the Walkerton days in some municipalities. So thank you for us weighing in on it.
Thank you, Councillor Gartner. I would just suggest that maybe on that one, if you could, as you said, sit down with the clerk, maybe make that letter specific to our municipality and to Aurora, and then bring that forward, and then we can pass that to send that along as a council.
Thank you very much. I just wonder, could somebody tell me where we're at with respect to the 2 baseball diamonds, planning for the 2 baseball diamonds?
Ms. McDougall or our CEO? Ms. McDougall, you want to take a stab at this?
I apologize. I'd ask if the councillor could please repeat the question.
Where are we at with the 2 baseball diamonds on the Hallmark lands? So, Mr. Downey.
Through you, we are in the process of acquiring a landscape architect through the procurement process, at which point we will then get into the design elements of Hallmark and hope to start construction in the spring.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. CAO or to Mr. Downey, what is the proposed oversight process for this to make sure that we don't get into any trouble? I mean, we've had trouble with buildings, but do we have an oversight process for park projects?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we have an oversight process, and it is actually multi-departmental at this point, because we have implemented a project manager who is also doing oversight on a corporate level with regards to projects, and so we're reporting into that individual on a regular basis. And so once the project is commenced, the administration of that project falls within the landscape architect or the designer of the project, and it's overseen by our staff within operations, as well as staff within corporate services.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. I wasn't clear. Do we have a project manager on staff?
Mr. Downey? Oh, Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Wow.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have recently recruited a project manager on a 2-year contract that is developing a standard methodology for project management, and she is reaching out to all the individual departments and has oversight of our project management portfolio.
Councillor Gardner?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, is that project manager in our budget?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is being funded by capital funds from various projects. So we're pulling a little bit from various projects to fund this 2-year contract.
Councillor Gardner?
To establish a project management office and oversight.
Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. Is it common to use? Yes, the CEO is saying it's common to use capital funds for this kind of employee. Thank you. Good to hear.
Is that all, Councillor Gardner? For new business?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Kim? New business? No. Councillor Humphreys? Councillor Gilliland? Public service announcements. I'll start on my right this time. Councillor Gilliland. I gave you some.
He did.
Councillor Gilliland.
Okay, thank you.
Public service announcement.
Apologize for that. Got mixed up with all my papers here. All right, just a reminder that winter overnight parking restrictions are in effect. The town's bylaw states that cars must be off the roads between 2 and 6 a.m. between November 15th and April 15th. We thank you all for your cooperation in keeping the roads free from parked vehicles during the prohibited times. Our priority is to ensure the safe and efficient treatment of the roads of snow removal.
Thank you, Councillor Gilliland. Councillor Humphreys.
Oh, I have one too? Okay, this is fun. Are you sure?
I know this is.
Oh, here it is.
You.
Okay, public service announcements. Registrations are now open for the town's winter recreation aquatics program. That's great. Pick up a copy at the Community Services Program Guide at one of the town's recreation facilities, or view the program guide online at auroraca.recguide. That's great. Enrico's going to be going.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you. And here's a little one.
Sure.
So I'm sorry I was late, but you know, the star of the show, 7-year-old Enrico, did really good tonight. They had a great job. Our Lady of Grace had a great Christmas concert, and they were adorable. Great school.
Was he still wearing my button?
He was, yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to take him off, but just won't take it off. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Kim.
So the town of Aurora is seeking your thoughts on recreational cannabis outlets in Aurora. Share your views with fellow Aurorans, town council, and town staff by visiting playspeak.com/Aurora Cannabis Retail. So your feedback is very important to us.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Skylight Gallery artist for December is Claudine Mueller. Claudine's art is fun, vivid in color, inspired by her appreciation and love of life. The exhibit opens Monday to Friday from 8:30 to 4:30 at the Town Hall, 3rd floor. Also, Mr. Mayor, I'll leave the purple stuff to you.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
No, you can do it.
No, you go ahead.
Some of us are wearing purple this evening, and we're doing it because the town did a flag raising last week with Yellow Brick House to support the campaign against violence towards women and children. And it just happened that that day of the flag raising, or maybe it didn't just happen, was the 29th anniversary of École Polytechnique massacre. So, and we got some statistics on violence against women and children, and it's not good. So if you want to go to Yellow Brick House website, I think they're selling these wonderful things that we're wearing, including purple ties. There was a hometown hockey event last weekend, and they presented $15,000 to Girls Inc., which is an organization that does a lot of good for young women.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. And I just remind everyone, not only is council wearing purple, but staff has joined in, and they're all wearing purple as well, which is, thank you for everyone for wearing that. Councillor Thompson.
The 2019 waste and recycling calendars are out. Hard copies should have been mailed to most residents, but if you didn't get a copy, you can certainly go to the town's website, download it electronically, or there's a link to an app as well, if you'd like one for your phone to keep you updated on which week is garbage and which week isn't.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gallo, Public Service Announcement.
Keep the kids busy during the holidays with our exciting Winterfest camp. Register for any of the following dates: December 27th, 28th, and January 2nd to 4th. For more information, visit aurora.ca/camp programs. And happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everyone. Hope you have a healthy and happy holiday.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo. Before I go into some public service announcements, I did also want to make mention that with the passing of the minutes, we have appointed members to the Aurora Public Library Board, the Committee of Adjustment, and as well as the Accessibility Advisory Committee. So for the Aurora Public Library Board, the appointed members are John Clement, Tom Connor, Adam Mobbs, Marie Rankel, and Ken Turiff. And our council representatives are Councillor Humphreys and Councillor Kim. For the Committee of Adjustment, the appointed members, citizen members are Michelle Boyer, Stephen DeAngeli, Daniel Lajeunesse, Clarence Liu, and Tom Plamondon. And the Accessibility Advisory Committee, we have Matthew Abbas, Gordon Barnes, Max Lemoyne, John Lenchek, Haley Reese, Joanne Spitzer, and our council representative is Councillor Gilliland. And just to make mention, Councillor Gardner also mentioned that she was at the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority meeting. She has also been appointed from our last regional meeting, and she will be our representative at Lake Simcoe. So congratulations. And it was mentioned about hometown hockey. It was last weekend. It was an incredible weekend. We were all there. We all took in the festivities, and I think that the residents, this town, was showcased on a national level, and I think everyone right across the country got to see what a great and unique town that Aurora really is. And now, for a couple of other public service announcements. Over the holidays, the Aurora Town Hall will be closed from Monday, December 24th to Friday, December 28th, and Town Hall will reopen on Monday, December 31st at 8:30 a.m. and will close at 3 p.m. Regular business hours of 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. will resume on Wednesday, January the 2nd. And come celebrate the holidays with us at Aurora's Family First Night on Monday, December 31st from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. All activities are free. You can participate in skating, swimming, crafts, face painting, and much, much more. So don't miss. There's reptiles, magic shows, food donations for the Aurora Food Pantry are appreciated. And for more information, please visit aurora.ca/firstnight. I know I'll be there. Hope some of you will be there as well to join us, and it's going to be an incredible night. And then lastly, Mr. Ramuno will be leaving us. This is his last meeting, and I believe Friday will be his last day. Is that correct, Mr. Ramuno? So first and foremost, I want to thank him for all his years of service to the town, to all the councils that he's served. He's served many different councilors, mayors. You've always given straight to the point answers, especially when we ask for just a yes or a no. No, but seriously, with all that, I personally will miss you. I think you've done a wonderful job for this town, and I think East Gwillimbury has done themselves a great service by picking you up. And if Mayor Haxon does not appreciate you, you're always welcome back here, and you have my number, and let me know, and I'll make sure that I let her know if she oversteps and treats you wrong. So thank you very much for the 11, I think it's 11, or is it 12? Just shy of 11? Well, for all those years of service, so thank you very much. And with that, I think we should wish everyone, not only sitting here, but all our residents, our community, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and all the best in the new year. And we're looking forward to an exciting new year and an exciting 4 years. So looking forward to seeing everyone when we get back from the holidays. And if I can get a motion for the bylaws. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Humphreys. Call the vote using your tabulator, please. Councillor Gardner? Councillor Thompson? That passes unanimously. Confirming bylaw, moved by Councillor Kim, seconded by Councillor Gartner. Call the vote using your tabulator, please. That passes unanimously. And then a motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Kim, seconded by Councillor Gilliland. All those in favor, hands up on this one. Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned.